The thunder rolled across the valley as Olivia Parker pressed her face against the rain-speckled window, watching dark clouds gather over the distant mountains. Redding, California was about to get the worst storm of 1873, and she had every intention of being gone before the first lightning strike. 3 months in this dusty frontier town was long enough, too long, perhaps, for a woman with secrets as heavy as hers. Olivia glanced at her packed carpetbag, sitting by the door of the small rented room above the general store. She'd been careful, saving every penny from her work as a seamstress, keeping to herself, not letting anyone get too close. Now she had enough for a stagecoach ticket south to Sacramento, where she could disappear into the anonymity of a larger city, further from the shadows that pursued her. A knock at her door startled her. She tensed, her hand instinctively reaching for the small Derringer pistol hidden in her skirt pocket. "Miss Parker, are you in there?" The voice belonged to Mrs. Wilkins, the shopkeeper's wife. "I've got a message for you." Olivia relaxed slightly, tucking a strand of auburn hair behind her ear before opening the door. "Yes, Mrs. Wilkins." The older woman handed her a folded piece of paper. "A boy brought this by for you, said it was urgent." Olivia thanked her and closed the door, unfolding the note with trembling fingers. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the message sent ice through her veins. "He knows where you are. Leave tonight." No signature, no explanation needed. Alexander, her late husband's brother, had found her trail again. The man who had threatened her life, who had pursued her across 3 states since Charles' death, was closing in. She had to leave immediately, storm or no storm. Olivia grabbed her carpetbag and cloak, hurrying down the back stairs of the general store. The wind was picking up, sending dust and debris swirling through Redding's Main Street. The stagecoach office was just 2 blocks away. If she could get there before the deluge began, she might be able to secure passage on the evening coach. As she stepped onto the boardwalk, a horse and rider came thundering down the street, stopping abruptly in front of the doctor's office across the way. The man dismounted in one fluid motion, revealing broad shoulders under a worn leather coat. His face was partially obscured by the brim of his hat, but there was no mistaking the urgency in his movements as he lifted a small form from the saddle, a child. The man cradled the bundle against his chest, his voice carrying across the street. "Doc Peterson, I need help." Olivia froze, torn between self-preservation and the distress in the stranger's voice. The doctor emerged from his office, ushering the man and child inside. Thunder cracked overhead closer now, and the first heavy raindrops began to fall. It was none of her concern, she told herself. She had to go. Now. But as she turned toward the stagecoach office, a woman's dying words echoed in her mind. "Promise me you'll help others, Livy, like I helped you." The memory of her friend Martha, who had sheltered Olivia during her escape from St. Louis, made her hesitate. Before she could reconsider, Olivia found herself crossing the street, carpetbag in hand, and stepping into the doctor's office. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. The man, a cowboy by the looks of his attire, paced the small waiting area while Dr. Peterson examined the child in the adjacent room. The boy couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 years old, with a mop of dark curls like his father's. "Is there anything I can do to help?" Olivia asked, setting down her bag. The man turned, revealing a face weathered by sun and worry, with striking blue eyes that widened slightly at the sight of her. "No, madam," he said, removing his hat. "We don't want to trouble you." "It's no trouble," she replied, though her instincts screamed that any delay could be dangerous. "What's wrong with your son?" "Fever came on sudden," he said, running a hand through his dark hair. "We rode in from the ranch when it wouldn't break. I'm Vaughn Sutton. That's my boy, Samuel." "Olivia Parker," she said, then immediately regretted giving her real name. Old habits died hard. Martha had taught her to use aliases, but something about this man's direct gaze made her forget her caution. A crash of thunder shook the building, making them both jump. Through the window, Olivia could see the storm had arrived in full force, sheets of rain obscuring the street outside. Dr. Peterson emerged from the examination room, his expression grave. "The fever's high, Vaughn. Too high. I've seen this before. It's the same thing that took the Miller child last month." Vaughn's face paled. "What can we do?" "I need to prepare some medicines, but I'm out of willow bark. Jenkins at the apothecary might have some, but he's closed up early because of the storm." "I'll break down his door if I have to," Vaughn said, reaching for his hat. "No need," Olivia interjected, thinking of the packet in her carpetbag. "I have some. My mother taught me to keep medicinal herbs for travel." Both men looked at her with surprise as she retrieved the small paper packet from her bag. "Will this be enough?" she asked, handing it to the doctor. "It might just be," Peterson said, examining the contents. "I'll brew it now, but the boy needs constant attention through the night. His fever must be kept down." "I'll stay with him," Vaughn said immediately. "You look dead on your feet, Mr. Sutton," the doctor observed. "When did you last sleep?" Vaughn shook his head dismissively. "Doesn't matter. Samuel needs me." "I can help," Olivia offered, the words escaping before she could stop them. The stagecoach would be gone by now anyway, she reasoned, and she couldn't leave a child suffering, one night. She could spare one night and then be on the first coach tomorrow. The doctor looked relieved. "Another pair of hands would be a blessing, Miss Parker. I have other patients to see to, even in this weather." Vaughn studied her face, doubt and gratitude warring in his expression. "I couldn't ask that of a stranger." "You didn't ask," she said simply. "I offered." In the examination room, the little boy stirred, his voice weak but clear enough to be heard through the partially open door. "Pa, where are you?" Vaughn immediately moved to his son's side and Olivia followed. The child's face was flushed with fever, his eyes too bright. When he saw his father, he reached out a small hand. "I don't feel good, Pa." "I know, partner," Vaughn said gently, taking the boy's hand. "But Doc Peterson's going to fix you right up, and this nice lady is going to help." Samuel's feverish gaze shifted to Olivia. "What's your name?" "Olivia," she said, moving closer to the bedside. "But you can call me Livy if you'd like." "I'm Samuel." "Everyone calls me Sam," the boy said, attempting a smile before a coughing fit overtook him. As Olivia helped Vaughn settle the child, Dr. Peterson prepared the willow bark tea. Outside, the storm intensified, rain lashing against the windows and thunder shaking the small building. The doctor lit additional lamps against the growing darkness. "I need to check on Mrs. Holden. Her time's near," Peterson said, grabbing his medical bag. "Keep cooling him with the wet cloths and try to get him to drink the tea when it's ready. I'll be back as soon as I can." After the doctor left, Olivia removed her cloak and rolled up her sleeves. She dipped a cloth in the basin of cool water and gently pressed it to Samuel's forehead. "You're good at that," Vaughn observed, watching her hands move with practiced efficiency. "I had a younger sister who was often sick," she said, the half-truth coming easily. It had been Martha's daughter, not her sister, but explaining that would reveal too much of her past. Samuel drifted in and out of consciousness as they worked, taking turns cooling his burning skin with wet cloths. When the tea was ready, Vaughn lifted the boy into a sitting position while Olivia helped him sip the bitter liquid. "It's yucky," Sam complained weakly. "The yuckier the medicine, the better it works," Olivia told him with a reassuring smile. "That's what my mother always said." "Is your ma a doctor?" Samuel asked. "No, but she knew a lot about healing plants. She taught me everything she knew." "Where is she now?" the boy asked innocently. Olivia's hand stilled momentarily. "She's gone to heaven," she said softly. "A long time ago." Samuel's feverish eyes grew sad. "Like my mama." The simple statement hung in the air, and Olivia glanced at Vaughn, whose face had tightened with old grief. "Yes," she said gently, "like your mama." As the night deepened, the storm showed no signs of abating. The thunder seemed to surround them, loud cracks that made the windows rattle. Samuel grew increasingly restless, his small body fighting the fever. During a brief period when the boy had fallen into an uneasy sleep, Vaughn stepped away from the bedside, moving to the window to watch the storm. Olivia continued bathing Samuel's forehead, singing softly, an old lullaby her mother had sung to her. "You have a beautiful voice," Vaughn said quietly, turning back to her. Olivia felt a flush of warmth that had nothing to do with the stuffy room. "Thank you." It helped soothe him. "How long have you been in Reading?" he asked. "I don't recall seeing you before." "Just a few months," she replied, deliberately vague. "I've been working for Mrs. Henderson, the dressmaker." "The carpetbag by the door, were you planning to travel somewhere tonight?" Olivia tensed. "I was, but the storm changed my plans." Vaughn's perceptive gaze made her uncomfortable. Must have been important to risk traveling in this weather. Before she could formulate a response, Samuel stirred, his eyes flying open with panic. "Pa, the thunder!" Vaughn was immediately at his side. "It's all right, Sam. We're safe inside." But the boy was inconsolable, tears streaming down his face as another thunderclap shook the building. "Don't like it," he sobbed. "Too loud. Like when Mama shh," Vaughn soothed, gathering his son against his chest. "I know, partner, I know." Olivia watched the tenderness with which the cowboy held his child, the gentle way his large, calloused hand smoothed the boy's dark curls. There was a story there, one connected to thunder and the absent mother, but it wasn't her place to ask. Samuel's tearful eyes found Olivia over his father's shoulder. "Don't go," he pleaded. "Stay till the thunder's gone." The simple request pierced her heart. "I'll stay," she promised, knowing it was foolish, knowing every hour she remained in Reading increased the danger. But how could she deny a sick child's plea? "Miss Olivia was planning to leave town tonight, Sam," Vaughn explained gently. "She's already been kind enough to help us, but she might have important business elsewhere." "Please," Samuel insisted, his voice breaking with another cough. "I'm scared." Olivia moved closer, placing a hand on the boy's back. "I'll stay until the storm passes," she assured him. "I promise." Relief flooded the child's face, and he relaxed against his father, his eyes growing heavy again. "Thank you," he murmured as he drifted back to sleep. Over the boy's head, Vaughn's eyes met Olivia's. "You don't have to stay if you need to go," he said quietly. "Don't feel obligated because of Sam." "A promise is a promise," she replied. "Besides, the stage coaches won't be running in this weather anyway." As the night wore on, Dr. Peterson returned briefly to check on Samuel, nodding with approval at their care. "The fever hasn't broken yet, but it hasn't risen either. That's a good sign. Keep doing what you're doing." Vaughn and Olivia established a rhythm, taking turns sitting with Samuel while the other rested in a chair nearby. During one such exchange, when Olivia had insisted Vaughn get some sleep, she found herself studying the sleeping cowboy. He wasn't handsome in the conventional sense, not like her late husband Charles had been with his smooth features and perfectly trimmed mustache. Vaughn Sutton was rugged, with lines at the corners of his eyes that spoke of squinting into the sun, and a stubbled jaw that hadn't seen a razor in days. But there was something compelling about him, a strength that had nothing to do with his broad shoulders, and everything to do with the gentle way he cared for his son. Around 3 in the morning, Samuel's fever finally broke. The boy's skin, which had been burning hot for hours, suddenly grew damp with sweat and his breathing eased. Olivia placed a hand on his forehead, relief flooding through her. "Vaughn," she whispered, not wanting to startle him. "Wake up." He was instantly alert, moving to the bedside. "What is it?" "His fever's breaking," she said with a smile. "Feel." Vaughn's hand replaced hers on Samuel's forehead, and the tension visibly drained from his body. "Thank God," he breathed. "And thank you, Olivia. If you hadn't been here with your willow bark and your steady hands—" "You would have managed," she said, suddenly uncomfortable with his gratitude. "You're clearly a good father." Samuel stirred, his eyes opening, clearer now without the glaze of fever. "Pa, Miss Olivia, is the thunder gone?" "Not yet, partner," Vaughn said, smoothing his son's damp hair. "But you're feeling better, aren't you?" Samuel nodded, yawning. "I'm thirsty." Olivia brought him water, helping him sit up to drink. "Your fever's broken," she told him. "That means you're getting well." "Will you still stay till the thunder's gone?" the boy asked, his eyes earnest. Olivia glanced at the window, where rain still pelted the glass, though the thunder had grown more distant. "Yes, I'll stay." By dawn, the storm had moved east, leaving behind puddles and debris but a gloriously clear sky. Dr. Peterson returned, pronounced Samuel out of danger, and prescribed a day of rest before the boy could travel back to the ranch. "You two should get some proper rest as well," he told Vaughn and Olivia. "You've been up all night." "We can use the back room at the hotel," Vaughn said. "I know the owner, Jim Harker. He'll let us have it for the day." Olivia shook her head. "I should be going. The morning stage will be leaving soon." Samuel, who was sitting up in bed and looking remarkably improved, frowned. "But you said you'd stay till the thunder's gone." "The thunder is gone, Sam," she explained gently, "and you're feeling much better." The boy's lower lip trembled. "But what if it comes back? The thunder always comes back." Vaughn placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Miss Olivia has her own life, Samuel. She's already done so much for us." "Where are you going?" Samuel asked her, his eyes wide. "Is it far?" Olivia hesitated. "Sacramento," she finally said. "That's where my aunt lives." Samuel brightened. "Aunt Rebecca. She sends me candies on my birthday." "What a coincidence," Olivia said with a forced smile, glancing at the clock on the wall. "I really should check on the stage schedule." "At least let me buy you breakfast first," Vaughn insisted. "It's the least I can do after all your help." Against her better judgment, Olivia agreed. They settled Samuel in a comfortable chair in the doctor's front room with a picture book, then stepped across the street to the small cafe that had just opened for the day. The town was quiet, still recovering from the night's storm. A few workers were clearing fallen branches from the main street, and shopkeepers were sweeping water from their boardwalks. Over eggs and coffee, Vaughn studied her with those perceptive blue eyes. "You're running from something," he said without preamble. Olivia nearly choked on her coffee. "I beg your pardon. I recognize the signs," he said quietly. "The way you check the door every time someone walks past the window, the carpet bag packed for quick departure, the reluctance to talk about yourself." She set down her cup carefully. "Mr. Sutton, I don't think, Vaughn," he corrected. "And I'm not asking you to explain. Lord knows everyone in these parts has something in their past they'd rather forget." He paused. "I just want you to know that Redding's a good town. Sheriff Dawson keeps the peace and folks mind their business." "It's not that simple," she said, struggling to maintain her composure. "It rarely is," he agreed. "But sometimes running isn't the answer." Olivia's defenses rose. "You know nothing about me or my circumstances." "True enough," he acknowledged. "But I know what it's like to want to escape. After Eliza, Sam's mother, died, I wanted to leave everything behind. Take Sam and head farther west, maybe all the way to the ocean." "What stopped you?" she asked despite herself. "Samuel needed stability more than I needed escape," he said simply. And running from grief just means it catches up to you somewhere else. The words hit too close to home. Olivia wasn't running from grief, but from very real danger. Yet something in his steady gaze made her want to explain, to unburden herself of the secret she'd carried alone for too long. Before she could decide whether to trust him, the cafe door opened, and Sheriff Dawson entered. The lawman nodded to them both, then approached their table. "Morning, Vaughn, Miss Parker." He touched the brim of his hat. "Heard about young Samuel's fever. Doc says he's on the mend." "Yes, thanks to Miss Parker's help," Vaughn replied. The sheriff turned to Olivia. "Mighty fortunate you were there, madam. Say, while I have you, there was a fella asking about you at the stage office yesterday." Olivia's blood ran cold. "Asking about me?" Tall gent, well-dressed with a fancy Eastern accent. "Said he was a relative trying to locate you on family business." The sheriff's eyes narrowed slightly. "I told him I didn't know of any Olivia Parker in town, which was the truth till I heard your name just now. Should I have told him different?" She swallowed hard, her appetite gone. "No, thank you, Sheriff, he's not a relative." "Figured as much from the way he was showing your description around." Dawson glanced at Vaughn, who had straightened in his chair, suddenly alert. "Just thought you should know he's in the area." After the sheriff moved to another table, silence fell between them. Olivia's hands trembled as she reached for her purse. "I need to go," she whispered. "The stage, Olivia," Vaughn said quietly, leaning forward. "Let me help you." "You can't," she insisted. "You don't understand what he's capable of." "Then tell me," he urged. "Who is he?" The weight of her secret pressed down on her, making it hard to breathe. For 3 months she'd carried it alone, never trusting anyone enough to share the truth. But here, across from this man whose son she'd helped save, whose steady presence had comforted her through the long night, she found herself wanting to trust. "My husband's brother," she finally said, her voice barely audible. "Alexander Blackwood. He blames me for Charles' death." "Was he right to?" Vaughn asked, his expression giving nothing away. "No," she whispered fiercely. "Charles died of pneumonia after a hunting trip. He refused to see a doctor until it was too late, said it was just a chill." The memory still had the power to make her chest ache with guilt. "I should have insisted, should have gone for the doctor anyway." "That's not your fault," Vaughn said firmly. "Alexander doesn't see it that way. After the funeral, he came to me, raving that I'd let Charles die to inherit his money." She laughed bitterly. "What money?" "Charles had gambled away most of his inheritance before we even met. What little was left barely covered the funeral expenses." "And this Alexander threatened you?" Olivia nodded, unconsciously touching her wrist where the bruises had long since faded. "He said he would make me pay for what I'd done. That night, someone set fire to the garden shed while I was sleeping. I woke to smoke filling the house." She took a shaky breath. "The next day, my friend Martha helped me leave St. Louis. I've been moving west ever since, staying a few months in each place until he finds my trail again." Vaughn's jaw tightened. "And now he's found you here." "Yes," she stood abruptly. "I need to be on that stage." "Wait," he said, rising as well. "Come to my ranch instead." Olivia stared at him. "What?" "The double S is 15 miles outside of town. Remote, defensible. This Alexander fellow won't think to look for you there." "I couldn't impose. It's not an imposition," he insisted. "Samuel's already attached to you and we could use the help while he recovers." He smiled slightly. "Besides, I owe you for saving my boy's life." "You don't owe me anything," she protested. "Maybe not," he acknowledged. "But I'm offering anyway, just until we figure out a more permanent solution." The cafe door opened again, and Olivia tensed, expecting Alexander's tall figure. Instead, Dr. Peterson hurried in. "There you are," he said, slightly breathless. "Samuel's asking for you both. Says he had a bad dream about the thunder coming back. Vaughn looked at Olivia, the question unspoken but clear in his eyes. She hesitated, torn between the safety of distance and the unexpected connection she felt to this man and his son. If she left on the stage, Alexander would likely follow her trail to Sacramento. But if she disappeared into the countryside? "All right," she finally said, surprising herself. "I'll come to the ranch, but just for a few days." The relief in Vaughn's eyes was palpable. "Good. We'll leave as soon as Sam's strong enough to travel." As they hurried back to the doctor's office, Vaughn's hand brushed against hers. A brief, reassuring touch that sent warmth spreading through her despite the morning chill. For the first time since leaving St. Louis, Olivia felt something other than fear, the faintest stirring of hope. Samuel was sitting up in his chair, his face pale but his eyes clear as they entered. His expression brightened immediately. "You're still here." "Of course I am," Olivia said, kneeling beside him. "I promised, didn't I?" "Miss Olivia's going to come stay with us at the ranch for a while," Vaughn told him. "Would you like that?" Samuel's whole face lit up. "Really? For how long, we'll see," Olivia said, not wanting to make promises she couldn't keep. "First, we need to get you well enough to travel." "I'm better already," the boy insisted, sitting up straighter as if to prove it. "Can we go home today?" Dr. Peterson, who had followed them in, shook his head. "Tomorrow would be safer, young man. Your body needs rest after fighting that fever. But where will we stay tonight?" Samuel asked, looking from his father to Olivia. "I've arranged rooms at the hotel," Vaughn said. "Jim's got that corner suite with the connecting rooms available." Olivia felt a pang of unease. Staying in town another night increased the risk of Alexander finding her, but she couldn't argue without explaining why, not in front of Samuel and the doctor. "That sounds fine," she said, forcing a smile. "In the meantime, Samuel, why don't I see if I can find you something to eat? You must be hungry after being sick." While Vaughn settled the bill with Dr. Peterson, Olivia slipped across to the general store with Samuel's breakfast order. As she waited for Mrs. Wilkins to prepare the food, she peered cautiously out the front window, scanning the street for any sign of Alexander. Instead, her attention was caught by a man in a dark coat stepping out of the telegraph office. Not Alexander, but someone who triggered a memory, one of the men who had been with him in the last town she'd fled from. Her heart raced. If Alexander's associate was here, he couldn't be far behind. Mrs. Wilkins returned with a small basket containing bread, cheese, and a jar of preserves. "Here you are, Miss Parker. Will you be wanting anything else?" "No, thank you," Olivia said distractedly, her gaze still fixed on the man outside who was now walking toward the hotel. "Actually, yes, do you have any paper and envelopes? I need to write a letter." Back at the doctor's office, she found Vaughn helping Samuel into a clean shirt that the doctor had provided. The boy looked better by the hour, his natural color returning. "I brought breakfast," she announced, setting down the basket and keeping her voice deliberately light. "And I need to retrieve my carpet bag from my room. I'll be back shortly." Before Vaughn could offer to accompany her, she slipped out, hurrying through back alleys to avoid being seen on the main street. At her rented room, she quickly gathered the few belongings she had unpacked, adding the letter she had just written to the top of her bag. If Alexander found her, at least Vaughn would know the truth. When she returned to the doctor's office, Samuel was happily eating and Vaughn was checking the weather through the window. "Looks like we're in for more rain tonight," he observed as she entered, "but it should clear by morning for our ride to the ranch." Olivia nodded, setting her bag by the door. "I've settled my account with Mrs. Henderson and Mrs. Wilkins," she said. "I'm ready when you are." Vaughn studied her face. "Everything all right?" "Fine," she lied, avoiding his gaze. "Just tired." By mid-afternoon, they had moved to the hotel, where Jim Harker welcomed them warmly, showing them to a comfortable suite with 2 connecting bedrooms. Samuel, still weak but improving, fell asleep almost immediately on one of the beds. While the boy napped, Vaughn and Olivia sat in the small sitting area speaking in low voices. "I saw one of Alexander's men today," she confessed, "near the telegraph office." Vaughn's expression hardened. "Are you certain?" "Yes. He was with Alexander in Reno, the last place I stayed." She twisted her hands in her lap. "If he's here, Alexander won't be far behind." "Then we'll leave at first light," Vaughn decided. "I've got a wagon outside of town at my friend Tom's livery. We can slip out before dawn, avoid the main roads." "You and Samuel should stay here," Olivia argued. "This is my problem, not yours." Vaughn leaned forward, his gaze intense. "Listen to me, Olivia. I'm not in the habit of abandoning people who need help, especially not after they've helped my son. We're safer together, and the ranch is the safest place I know." His conviction silenced her objections. There was something about Vaughn Sutton that made her want to believe in safety again, in the possibility of not running. "All right," she conceded, "but we need to be careful. Alexander is persistent." "So am I," Vaughn replied with a slight smile. "Get some rest. I'll keep watch." Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded Olivia. She lay on the bed in the smaller bedroom, listening to the rain that had started again, gentler than the previous night's storm. Through the partially open door, she could see Vaughn sitting by the window, his profile outlined against the gray light. Eventually, she must have dozed off, because she awoke with a start to complete darkness, her heart pounding. Something had disturbed her sleep, a sound, a presence. She sat up slowly, reaching for the derringer under her pillow. In the sitting room, Vaughn's chair by the window was empty. The connecting door to Samuel's room stood ajar, and she could hear the boys even breathing. Then came the sound again, a soft knock at the outer door. Olivia froze, her finger on the trigger of her small pistol. Where was Vaughn? The door opened slowly, and a familiar silhouette appeared. "It's just me," Vaughn whispered, slipping inside. "I went to check the back staircase, make sure we have a clear exit for morning." Relief made her hands tremble as she set down the gun. I know," he said, moving to her doorway. "Sorry for startling you. Everything's quiet. No sign of unwanted visitors." In the dim light filtering through the curtains, she could just make out his features, softer somehow without the tension of worry for his son. "You should try to sleep," he said. "We'll be leaving in a few hours." Olivia nodded, but as he turned to go back to his chair, she found herself speaking. "Vaughn, thank you for everything." He paused, looking back at her. "You'd have done the same for anyone else." "No," she admitted softly. "I wouldn't have. I've spent so long protecting myself. I'd forgotten what it means to help others. Until last night." In the silence that followed, something shifted between them, an acknowledgement of the connection that had formed during those long hours tending to Samuel. A recognition that perhaps they had each found something they hadn't known they were seeking. "Good night, Olivia," he said finally, his voice warm. "Good night," she whispered back. True to his word, Vaughn woke her before dawn. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a misty morning that would provide good cover for their departure. Samuel, though still weak, was excited about the journey, especially with Olivia accompanying them. They slipped out through the back of the hotel, making their way through quiet alleys to the livery stable on the edge of town. Vaughn's friend Tom had prepared the wagon as promised, with fresh horses and supplies. "Been keeping an eye out like you asked," Tom told Vaughn quietly as they loaded Olivia's carpet bag. "There was a fancy-dressed fella asking questions at the hotel late last night. Tall with a walking stick that had a silver handle, Alexander." Olivia's hands grew cold despite her gloves. "Did he find anything?" Vaughn asked. Tom shook his head. "Harker's loyal to his friends, said he hadn't seen you or the boy." "Good man," Vaughn said. "We'll be gone before anyone's the wiser." With Samuel tucked between them on the wagon seat, wrapped in blankets against the morning chill, they set off, taking a roundabout route to avoid the main road out of Reading. As the town disappeared behind them, Olivia felt the familiar mixture of relief and apprehension that came with another escape, another displacement. But this time was different. This time she wasn't alone. They traveled through misty forests and across shallow streams, Vaughn expertly navigating terrain that seemed to have no trail at all. By mid-morning, the sun had burned off the mist, revealing rolling grasslands dotted with oak trees and distant mountains. "That's our land," Vaughn said, pointing to a ridge ahead. "The double S runs from that line of trees all the way to the creek that feeds into the Sacramento River." "It's beautiful," Olivia said, genuinely impressed by the expanse of well-tended rangeland. Samuel, who had been quiet for much of the journey, perked up. "Wait till you see the house, Miss Olivia. Pa built it himself, and we have horses you can ride. Daisy, she's gentle, and chickens and 2 milk cows, and slow down, partner," Vaughn laughed. "Let's get home first before you give Miss Olivia the grand tour." The ranch house came into view as they crested a rise, a solid 2-story structure of weathered pine, with a wide porch and smoke curling from the stone chimney. "Someone's there," Olivia said, tension returning to her voice. "That'll be Hank," Vaughn assured her. "He's my foreman, stays at the house when we're away." As they approached, a wiry older man emerged from the house, raising a hand in greeting. Behind him, a woman in an apron appeared, wiping her hands on a cloth. "That's Rosa," Vaughn explained. "Hank's wife. She comes up from their cabin to cook when I'm home with Samuel." The wagon rolled to a stop in front of the house, and Hank hurried to help them down. "Good to see you back, boss," he said, his leathery face creasing into a smile. "And you too, young Sam. Heard you had a rough go of it." "I'm better now," Samuel declared. "Miss Olivia helped make me well." Hank tipped his hat to Olivia. "Madam, welcome to the double S." Rosa bustled forward to take Samuel inside, clucking over his pale appearance and promising him his favorite bean soup for lunch. Vaughn helped unload Olivia's bag, then led her up the steps to the porch. "It's not fancy," he said, suddenly self-conscious, "but it's solid. Built it 5 years ago after Eliza and I married." Olivia gazed up at the house, noting the careful craftsmanship, the attention to detail in the carved porch posts and the well-fitted windows. "It's wonderful," she said sincerely. "A real home." Inside, the house was simply but comfortably furnished, with a large main room that served as both parlor and dining area, a kitchen beyond, and stairs leading to the upper floor. A fire crackled in the stone fireplace, warming the space. "You'll have the guest room upstairs," Vaughn told her. "It has a nice view of the valley." As Rosa showed her to her room, Olivia was struck by how quickly life at the ranch seemed to absorb her presence, as if she had always been expected. Samuel insisted on giving her a tour once he'd rested, proudly showing off his father's craftsmanship and his own small collection of treasures, interesting rocks, a hawk feather, a wooden horse Vaughn had carved for him. By evening, as they gathered around the dinner table, Olivia found herself relaxing for the first time in months. The ranch's isolation, the warmth of its inhabitants, and the distance from Reading all contributed to a sense of security she had almost forgotten. After Samuel went to bed, exhausted from the day's excitement despite his improved condition, Olivia and Vaughn sat on the porch, watching the stars emerge in the clear night sky. "You think he'll find me here?" she asked, Giving voice to the fear that still lingered beneath her newfound comfort, Vaughn considered the question seriously. "It's possible," he admitted, "but not likely, at least not right away. Few people in town know where the ranch is exactly, and fewer still would tell a stranger." "Alexander has money and determination," she said. "A dangerous combination." "So do I," Vaughn replied, his voice steady, "and I have something else he doesn't." "What's that?" "People who care about what happens to me and mine," he said simply. "That counts for more than money out here." The casual inclusion of her in that statement, "me and mine," sent an unexpected warmth through Olivia. It had been so long since she had belonged anywhere, with anyone. "I still don't understand why you're doing this," she said. "Taking in a complete stranger, putting yourself and Samuel at risk." Vaughn was silent for a moment, his gaze on the distant mountains. "After Eliza died, I was lost," he finally said. "She was caught in a sudden storm, a flash flood. Samuel was with her, but a neighbor managed to save him." He took a deep breath. "Ever since, thunder terrifies him. Reminds him of that day, I guess." "I'm so sorry," Olivia whispered. "For a long time after, I couldn't see past my own grief," he continued. "Wasn't the father Sam needed. It was Hank and Rosa who pulled me through, reminded me I still had a son who needed me." He turned to look at her, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "So I understand something about needing help when you're lost, and I believe in passing it on when I can." Impulsively, Olivia reached out and covered his hand with hers. "Samuel is lucky to have you." Vaughn's fingers curled around hers, warm and strong. "And I'm lucky to have him. He's all that matters to me." The simple declaration, spoken with such conviction, moved her deeply. Charles had never spoken that way about their marriage, about her. His declarations of love had always been flowery, theatrical, never this straightforward honesty. They sat in companionable silence, hands still joined, until the chill of the night air finally drove them inside. The next few days fell into an easy rhythm. Samuel continued to recover his strength, delighted to have Olivia there to read to him and listen to his stories. Vaughn went about the ranch work with Hank, returning in the evenings to find his house transformed by Olivia's presence, not just by her practical contributions in helping Rosa with meals and keeping Samuel entertained, but by the simple fact of her being there, her quick smile and thoughtful conversation. Olivia, for her part, found herself settling into ranch life with surprising ease. She enjoyed the honest work, the open spaces, the lack of pretense among the people. Most of all, she enjoyed watching Vaughn with his son, the tender roughhousing, the patient answers to endless questions, the shared jokes that spoke of a deep bond. A week passed, then another. The fear of discovery began to recede, replaced by a growing attachment to the ranch and its inhabitants. Olivia knew she should be planning her next move, but found herself increasingly reluctant to think about leaving. One afternoon, while Samuel napped and Vaughn was out checking the herd, she sat on the porch mending one of the boys' shirts. Rosa emerged from the kitchen, wiping flour from her hands, and settled into the chair beside her. "You're good for them," the older woman said without preamble. "Both of them." Olivia looked up from her sewing. "They've been good for me too." Rosa nodded, her dark eyes knowing. "I've seen the way he looks at you when you're not watching. Hasn't looked at anyone that way since Eliza." Heat rose to Olivia's cheeks. "You're mistaken. We're just friends." Rosa supplied with a soft laugh. "Maybe so, but friendship can grow into something more, no? Especially when the soil is already rich with respect." Before Olivia could respond, the sound of approaching hooves made them both turn. Vaughn was riding in at a gallop, his expression urgent. He dismounted before the horse had fully stopped, taking the porch steps 2 at a time. "Olivia," he said, slightly breathless. I just met Tom on the boundary line. He rode out to warn us Alexander Blackwood is in Reading, offering a reward for information on your whereabouts. The peaceful feeling that had been growing inside her shattered. How much does he know? Too much, Vaughn said grimly. He knows you left town with a rancher and his son. It won't take long for someone to connect that to me, especially if the reward is high enough. Rosa stood, her expression concerned. I'll go check on Samuel. The boy has sharp ears. She disappeared inside, leaving them alone. I have to go, Olivia said, rising to her feet. I've stayed too long already, put you all at risk. No, Vaughn said firmly, taking her hands. Running is exactly what he expects. We need to face this head on. You don't understand what he's capable of, she insisted. He won't stop until he finds me. Then let him find you, Vaughn said, his blue eyes intense. Here, where you have people to stand with you. The idea was both terrifying and tempting. To stop running, to make a stand, it seemed impossible after so many months of flight. And yet, looking at Vaughn's determined face, she could almost believe it might work. What would we do? She asked, her voice barely audible. Go to Sheriff Dawson, Vaughn suggested. Tell him the whole story. Get the law on our side before Alexander can spin his own version. Olivia shook her head. It would be my word against his. I have no proof of his threats. You have witnesses to his pursuit, Vaughn countered. People in other towns who saw him looking for you, offering rewards, and you have me. And what would you say? She challenged. That you believe a woman you've known for barely 2 weeks over a respected businessman from St. Louis? Yes, he said without hesitation. Because I know you, Olivia. Maybe not your whole past, but I know your character. The way you cared for Samuel when he was sick. The way you work beside Rosa without complaint. The kindness you show to everyone at the ranch. His hands tightened around hers. I know enough. The conviction in his voice nearly undid her. How long had it been since someone had believed in her so completely? Even if the sheriff believes us, she said, it might not stop Alexander. His hatred runs too deep. Then we'll face that too, Vaughn promised. Together. The word hung between them, laden with meaning. Olivia looked up into his face, searching for any sign of doubt or hesitation. She found none. Why? She whispered. Why would you do this for me? Vaughn's expression softened. Because in 2 weeks, you've brought more life and light to this house than it's seen in years. Because Samuel adores you. Because he stopped, then started again, more deliberately. Because I find myself thinking about you first thing when I wake up and last thing before I sleep. Because the thought of you leaving tears something inside me that I didn't even know was healing. The raw honesty of his words left her speechless. In the silence that followed, the sound of small feet on the stairs inside reminded them both of Samuel's presence. Think about it, Vaughn said quietly, releasing her hands as the boy appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. But know that whatever you decide, you won't face it alone. Not anymore. That night after Samuel was asleep, Olivia stood by her bedroom window, watching the moon rise over the valley. The beauty of the ranch, the peace she had found here, made the decision both harder and clearer. She could run again, start over in another town, always looking over her shoulder. Or she could stay and fight for this newfound happiness, for the chance to belong somewhere again. A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find Vaughn standing there, his expression solemn. I couldn't sleep, he admitted. Kept thinking about what you might decide. She stepped back to let him enter, then returned to the window. I've been thinking about what you said, about facing this together. And he prompted gently. I'm afraid, she confessed, not just of Alexander, but of staying in one place, of letting myself care too much. It's been safer not to. Vaughn moved to stand beside her, close but not touching. Safer maybe, but is it living? The question struck at the heart of her existence, these past months' survival without truly living, always ready to flee at the first sign of danger. "No," she admitted softly. "It's not." "Stay, Olivia," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Not just until we deal with Alexander. Stay because you want to be here, because we want you here." She turned to face him, acutely aware of his proximity, of the quiet intensity in his eyes. "And if I stay, what then?" "Then we see where this leads," he said simply. "No promises except one that you'll never have to face your battles alone again." The moonlight cast half his face in shadow, but she could read the sincerity in his expression, the careful restraint that kept him from saying more, promising more. "All right," she whispered. "I'll stay. And we'll face Alexander together." The relief that washed over his features was profound. Without thinking, she reached up and laid her palm against his cheek. His hand covered hers, pressing it closer, and for a moment they stood there, connected by that simple touch, the first step toward something more. "We should go to town tomorrow," she said. "Talk to Sheriff Dawson before Alexander can spread his lies further." Vaughn nodded. "I'll have Hank stay with Samuel. Rosa too." "I don't want to put them in danger," Olivia worried. "Hank's tougher than he looks," Vaughn assured her, "and he keeps a shotgun by the door. They'll be fine for a few hours." They finalized their plans, and Vaughn reluctantly left her to get some sleep. But as Olivia lay in bed, she found herself more awake than ever, her mind racing with possibilities both fearful and hopeful. The next morning dawned clear and bright, as if nature itself approved of their decision. After breakfast, Vaughn hitched the wagon while Olivia explained to Samuel that they needed to go to town on business. "Why can't I come too?" the boy protested. "I'm well now." "I know you are, partner," Vaughn said, kneeling to his level, "but this is grown-up business and it might take a while. Rosa's making a special lunch, and Hank said he might take you fishing at the creek if you finish your lessons." Samuel's face brightened at the mention of fishing, but he still looked disappointed. "Will you bring me something from town?" "Of course," Olivia promised, smoothing his dark curls. "What would you like?" he thought for a moment. "A book, one we don't have already." "A book it is," she agreed, touched by his request. After assuring Hank and Rosa they would be back by evening, they set off for Reading. The journey felt different than their escape 2 weeks earlier, purposeful rather than fearful, though Olivia couldn't entirely quell the apprehension that grew as they approached town. "Remember," Vaughn said as they neared the outskirts, "we go straight to the sheriff's office. No stopping, no talking to anyone else first." Olivia nodded, pulling her shawl more closely around her shoulders despite the warm day. "What if he's there, at the sheriff's office?" "Then we face him," Vaughn said firmly, "with the law as witness." They left the wagon at the livery and walked quickly through town, Vaughn's hand at the small of her back, protective and reassuring. Olivia kept her gaze downcast, not wanting to be recognized before they reached Sheriff Dawson. The sheriff's office was at the far end of the main street, a small but sturdy building with barred windows on one side for the 2 jail cells it contained. As they approached, the door opened, and a tall figure emerged, Alexander Blackwood. Olivia froze, her breath catching in her throat. He hadn't seen them yet, was looking down at something in his hands, papers of some kind. Vaughn's arm went around her shoulders. "Steady," he murmured. "We knew this might happen." It was too late to retreat. Alexander looked up, his gaze sweeping the street and landing on them. For a moment he seemed not to recognize Olivia, her appearance changed by the simpler dress and bonnet she now wore. Then his eyes narrowed, and a cold smile spread across his face. "Olivia," he called, his voice carrying down the street. "What a delightful surprise. I've been looking everywhere for you." Several passers-by turned to watch as Alexander approached, his walking stick tapping a measured rhythm on the boardwalk. He was, as Olivia remembered, tall and lean, impeccably dressed, with the same handsome features as Charles but none of her late husband's warmth. "Mr. Blackwood," she acknowledged, forcing her voice to remain steady. Vaughan's solid presence beside her gave her courage. Alexander's gaze shifted to Vaughan, assessing. "And who might this be?" "Your latest protector, Vaughan Sutton," Vaughan said evenly, not offering his hand. "We were just on our way to see Sheriff Dawson." "What a coincidence," Alexander said smoothly. "I've just come from there myself." "Such a helpful man, your sheriff. Very interested in the story of a woman wanted for questioning in her husband's death." Olivia felt the blood drain from her face. "That's a lie," she said, her voice barely audible. "Is it?" Alexander raised an eyebrow. "Charles died while in your care, did he not? After you insisted he didn't need a doctor for what you called a simple chill." "That's not what happened," she protested, louder now. "You know that's not true." People were stopping to watch the confrontation, their curious faces reminding Olivia that they were in public, that every word could be twisted and repeated. "I think we should continue this discussion with the sheriff present," Vaughan said firmly, urging Olivia forward. Alexander stepped aside with exaggerated courtesy. "By all means. I'm sure Sheriff Dawson will be fascinated to hear your version of events." Inside the sheriff's office, they found Dawson at his desk, looking troubled. He stood as they entered, followed by Alexander. "Miss Parker," he said, his expression guarded. "Mr. Sutton, I was hoping you'd come in. Mr. Blackwood here has been telling me some concerning things." "I imagine he has," Vaughan said grimly, "and I imagine very little of it is true." Alexander affected a wounded expression. "I've merely related the facts as they occurred in St. Louis. If those facts paint my sister-in-law in an unflattering light, that's hardly my fault." "Sheriff," Olivia said, stepping forward, "Alexander has been pursuing me since Charles died, threatening me, trying to harm me. That's why I left St. Louis, why I've been moving from town to town." Dawson's gaze shifted between them. "That's a serious accusation, Miss Parker. Do you have any proof of these threats?" "Only my word," she admitted. "And the testimony of my friend Martha Wilson in St. Louis, who helped me leave after Alexander set fire to my home." "A convenient story," Alexander interjected. "Unfortunately, no proof was ever found that the fire was anything but an accident. And as for this Martha Wilson, I'm afraid she's not available to corroborate anything. She died last month." The news hit Olivia like a physical blow. Martha dead, the woman who had risked everything to help her, who had promised to testify if it ever came to that. "You're lying," she whispered. "I assure you I'm not," Alexander said coldly. "Consumption, I believe, quite tragic." Vaughan moved closer to Olivia, steadying her. "Sheriff," he said, "I've known Olivia for only a short time, but I've seen her character. She saved my son's life during the storm 2 weeks ago, stayed with him when she could have fled town, knowing that this man was looking for her." "A touching testimonial," Alexander said dismissively, "but it doesn't change the facts. Charles died under suspicious circumstances, and his widow fled before proper inquiries could be completed." "There were no inquiries," Olivia said, finding her voice again. "The doctor certified that Charles died of pneumonia. There was no investigation because there was nothing to investigate." "Yet you ran," Alexander pointed out. "Innocent people don't run." "They do when they're being threatened by someone with money and influence," Vaughan countered. Sheriff Dawson held up his hands. "All right, that's enough. Miss Parker, do you have any documentation of your husband's death? The doctor's certificate, perhaps?" Olivia shook her head. "Everything was left behind when I fled, but you can telegraph the authorities in St. Louis." Dr. James Wilson attended Charles in his final days. Wilson, Alexander laughed. Martha Wilson's husband, the same Martha who allegedly helped you escape. Hardly an unbiased source. Dawson sighed, rubbing his forehead. This is a complicated situation. Mr. Blackwood, do you have any official documents requesting Miss Parker's detention or return to St. Louis? Alexander's smile faltered slightly. Not at present. The authorities there are still gathering evidence. But as his only living relative, I have a moral obligation to ensure justice for my brother. Justice or revenge? Vaughn asked quietly. Alexander's expression hardened. Watch yourself, Mr. Sutton. You know nothing about my family or what this woman has done. I know she's afraid of you, Vaughn replied. And I know she's spent months running from town to town because of that fear. That tells me more than enough. The sheriff cleared his throat. Mr. Blackwood, without official papers, I have no grounds to detain Miss Parker. She's committed no crime in my jurisdiction that I'm aware of. She's living with an unmarried man, Alexander said sharply. Surely that violates some local standard of decency. Vaughn's jaw tightened dangerously. Miss Parker is a guest at my ranch, where my son and 2 employees also reside. There's been no impropriety. Nevertheless, Dawson said carefully, it might be best if alternative arrangements could be made to avoid any appearance of irregularity. She could stay with my sister in town, Vaughn suggested, though Olivia could see the reluctance in his eyes. Rebecca Sutton. She's a widow, runs the millinery shop on Oak Street. The sheriff nodded, seemingly relieved. That sounds like a reasonable solution, at least until this matter is resolved. And how will it be resolved, Sheriff? Alexander demanded. Are you simply going to take her word over mine? I'm going to telegraph St. Louis, Dawson said firmly. Get official word on the circumstances of Charles Blackwood's death. Until I hear back, both of you would do well to keep your distance from each other. He looked pointedly at Alexander. And there will be no rewards offered for information, no spreading of unsubstantiated rumors. Is that clear? Alexander's face flushed with anger, but he nodded curtly. Perfectly clear, Sheriff, but I warn you this woman is not what she seems. With that, he turned and left the office, the door slamming behind him. In the silence that followed, Olivia's legs gave way and she sank into a chair. Martha's dead, she whispered. She can't be. Vaughn knelt beside her, taking her hands. He could be lying, he said gently. To undermine your story. He's capable of it, she agreed, but doubt had crept in. Martha had been coughing during those last days in St. Louis, insisting it was nothing even as she helped Olivia pack. Sheriff Dawson sat down across from them. I'll telegraph St. Louis today, he promised. In the meantime, Mr. Sutton's suggestion about his sister seems wise. Alexander Blackwood strikes me as the type to use any ammunition he can find. Vaughn nodded reluctantly. I'll take Olivia there now, explain the situation to Rebecca. And what about Samuel? Olivia asked, her heart aching at the thought of the boy's disappointment. He's expecting me back at the ranch. I'll explain it to him, Vaughn assured her. He knows his Aunt Rebecca well, visits her often when we're in town. He'll understand you're not far away. As they left the sheriff's office, Olivia felt the weight of Alexander's presence in Reading like a dark cloud. Even if the telegrams from St. Louis confirmed her innocence, would it be enough to make him leave? Or would he find some other way to continue his vendetta? Rebecca Sutton's shop was on a quieter side street, a cheerful establishment with bonnets and hats displayed in the front window. Inside, they found a slender woman with Vaughn's blue eyes arranging a display of ribbons. Vaughn, she exclaimed, coming around the counter to embrace her brother. What a surprise! And who is this? Rebecca, this is Olivia Parker, Vaughn said. Olivia, my sister Rebecca Harmon. Rebecca's smile was warm as she extended her hand. "A pleasure, Miss Parker. I've heard about you from little Sam when he visited last week with Rosa. He speaks very highly of you." "The feeling is mutual," Olivia said, immediately liking Vaughn's sister. "Samuel is a wonderful child." "Rebecca," Vaughn said, his expression serious, "we need your help." Over tea in Rebecca's apartment above the shop, they explained the situation with Alexander. Rebecca listened without interruption, her expression growing increasingly concerned. "Of course she can stay with me," she said when they had finished, "for as long as necessary. I've been rattling around alone in this big apartment since Henry died. It will be nice to have company." "I can't thank you enough," Olivia said, touched by the immediate acceptance. "No thanks needed," Rebecca assured her. "Any friend of Vaughn and Samuel's is welcome here." She gave her brother a significant look that Olivia couldn't quite interpret. "And it sounds like you've been a good friend to them both." "She has," Vaughn confirmed, his gaze meeting Olivia's with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "The best." After settling Olivia at Rebecca's, Vaughn reluctantly prepared to return to the ranch. "I don't like leaving you in town with Alexander still here," he admitted as they stood in Rebecca's parlor. "I'll be fine," Olivia assured him, though her own misgivings were strong. "Rebecca's here and the sheriff knows the situation now. You need to get back to Samuel." "I'll return tomorrow," he promised, "and I'll bring Samuel. He'll want to see you." When he had gone, Rebecca showed Olivia to a comfortable guest room overlooking a small garden behind the shop. "It's not fancy," she apologized, "but I hope you'll be comfortable here." "It's lovely," Olivia assured her, "and your kindness means more than I can say." Rebecca studied her thoughtfully. "You know, my brother doesn't bring women to meet me, not since Eliza died." Olivia flushed. It's not like that. He's helping me, that's all." "Is it?" Rebecca smiled knowingly. "I saw the way he looked at you, and the way you looked back." Unsure how to respond, Olivia turned to the window, watching as dusk settled over the garden. "Even if there were feelings," she said carefully, "there's too much uncertainty right now. Alexander won't give up easily." "Men like that rarely do," Rebecca agreed, coming to stand beside her. "But I've never known Vaughn to give up either, especially not on someone he cares about." The words brought both comfort and anxiety. Olivia had allowed herself to care for Vaughn and Samuel more deeply than she'd intended, had begun to imagine a future at the Double S. But with Alexander in the picture, was such a future even possible? The next day passed slowly. Olivia helped Rebecca in the shop, grateful for the distraction of work and the older woman's cheerful conversation. Several times, she caught herself watching the door, hoping for Vaughn's arrival. It was mid-afternoon when he finally appeared, Samuel's small hand clasped in his. The boy broke free the moment he saw Olivia, running to throw his arms around her waist. "Miss Olivia, Aunt Rebecca, Pa said you had to stay in town because of a bad man, but that we could visit you every day until you come home." Home. The simple words, spoken so naturally, brought tears to Olivia's eyes. She knelt to embrace Samuel properly. "That's right, and I'm so happy to see you." "I brought you something," Samuel announced, producing a small, carefully wrapped package from his pocket. "I made it myself." Olivia unwrapped the gift to find a small wooden heart, crudely carved but polished smooth, with her initial O scratched into its surface. "Pa helped with the knife part," Samuel explained earnestly. "But I did the sanding all by myself. Do you like it?" "It's beautiful," she whispered, closing her fingers around the token. "I'll keep it always." Over Samuel's head her eyes met Vaughn's, and the emotion she saw there made her breath catch. This wasn't just kindness or attraction, it was something deeper, something that had grown quietly but steadily during their weeks together. While Samuel explored Rebecca's collection of hat boxes, Vaughn drew Olivia aside. "Any sign of Alexander?" he asked in a low voice. She shook her head. Not since yesterday. Rebecca says he's staying at the hotel. Sheriff Dawson sent the telegrams, Vaughn told her. We should have answers from St. Louis in a day or two. And if they confirm what I've said, will Alexander leave then? Vaughn's expression was troubled. I don't know. Men driven by hatred rarely respond to reason. Before she could reply, the shop door opened, and Alexander himself entered, his tall figure filling the doorway. Behind him, two other men waited, the one Olivia had seen at the telegraph office, and another she didn't recognize. What a charming domestic scene, Alexander said, his voice dripping with disdain. Playing shop with the local milliner, Olivia? How quaint. Rebecca stepped forward, her normally friendly demeanor replaced by steely resolve. This is my establishment, Mr. Blackwood, and you are not welcome here. Alexander ignored her, his gaze fixed on Olivia. I've come to make you an offer, my dear sister-in-law, one last chance to do the right thing. There's nothing to discuss, Vaughn said, moving to stand between Olivia and Alexander. Alexander sighed dramatically. Always the protector, Mr. Sutton, but you can't be everywhere at once, can you? Can't watch over your son and your guest simultaneously. At the mention of Samuel, Vaughn went very still. Are you threatening my son? Merely observing a fact, Alexander said smoothly. Children are so vulnerable, aren't they? One moment playing happily, the next. Who knows what might happen? Samuel, sensing the tension, had edged closer to Rebecca, who put a protective arm around him. Get out, Vaughn said, his voice dangerously quiet. Now, Alexander smiled thinly. As you wish, but my offer stands, Olivia. Return to St. Louis with me, face the questions you've been avoiding, and I'll leave this charming little town and its inhabitants in peace. His gaze shifted meaningfully to Samuel. You have until tomorrow to decide. After he left, the shop felt suddenly airless. Olivia's hands trembled as she sank into a chair. He wouldn't actually hurt a child, she whispered, trying to convince herself. I'm not willing to take that chance, Vaughn said grimly. He turned to Rebecca. Can you keep Samuel here tonight? I'll send Hank to watch the shop. Rebecca nodded, already moving to lock the door. Of course, we'll be fine. What are you going to do? Vaughn's expression was resolved. Talk to Sheriff Dawson again. Alexander just threatened my son. That changes things. I'll come with you, Olivia said, rising. This is my fight too. At the sheriff's office, they found Dawson sorting through a stack of wanted posters. He listened gravely as they recounted Alexander's visit and implied threat. That's serious, he acknowledged, but it's still just implied. Without direct evidence, I'm not waiting for direct evidence when my son's safety is at stake, Vaughn interrupted. No one's asking you to, Dawson assured him. I'll have a word with Blackwood, make it clear that threats against children won't be tolerated in my town. And I've got good news. The telegraph from St. Louis came through an hour ago. He handed them a paper from his desk. Dr. Wilson confirms that Charles Blackwood died of pneumonia with no suspicious circumstances, and there's no warrant or official inquiry concerning Olivia. Relief flooded through her. Then it's over. Alexander has no legal standing, none, Dawson confirmed. But that doesn't mean he'll give up. Men like Blackwood often feel they're above the law. So what do we do? Vaughn asked, frustration evident in his voice. The sheriff considered for a moment. Let me confront him with the telegrams, make it clear that he has no grounds to pursue this vendetta. If he persists, especially with threats against your boy, I'll have cause to run him out of town. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was something. As they left the sheriff's office, Olivia felt a strange mixture of relief and continued anxiety. The official confirmation of her innocence was vindicating, but Alexander's obsession went beyond legal concerns. They returned to Rebecca's shop, where Hank had already arrived with his shotgun, settling in for guard duty. Samuel, oblivious to the seriousness of the situation, was delighted at the prospect of a sleepover with his aunt. "You'll be back tomorrow?" he asked Vaughn as they prepared to leave. "First thing in the morning," Vaughn promised, hugging his son tightly. "Be good for Aunt Rebecca and do exactly what she and Hank tell you." Olivia knelt to say her own goodbye, and Samuel threw his arms around her neck. "I'm glad you liked my present," he whispered. "Pa says you might come back to the ranch soon. Is that true?" She glanced up at Vaughn, who was watching them with a soft expression. "I hope so," she told the boy. "I miss it there, and I miss you." "I miss you too," Samuel said, his small face serious. "It's not the same without you." Those simple words, spoken with a child's honesty, nearly undid her composure. Olivia hugged him once more, then stood, blinking back tears. Outside, the evening was settling over Reading, the streets growing quiet as shops closed and workers headed home or to the saloon for a drink. Vaughn took Olivia's arm as they walked back toward the hotel where Sheriff Dawson had said they could find Alexander. "What Samuel said," Vaughn began, his voice low. "About it not being the same without you, he's right. The ranch feels emptier somehow." Olivia's heart quickened. "It was only 2 weeks," she said softly. "Hardly enough time to make such an impression." Vaughn stopped, turning to face her on the quiet street. "Some impressions don't need much time," he said. "Sometimes you just know." The intensity in his blue eyes made it hard to breathe. "Know what?" she asked, barely above a whisper. "That someone belongs in your life," he said simply. "That they fit in a way no one else has before." Before she could respond, a shout from down the street caught their attention. Sheriff Dawson was hurrying toward them, his expression urgent. "Blackwood's gone," he called as he approached. "Checked out of the hotel an hour ago, left town with his men." Vaughn frowned. "Just like that, after all his threats?" "Apparently," Dawson confirmed. "The hotel clerk said they seemed in a hurry, left some belongings behind in their rooms." A chill ran down Olivia's spine. This doesn't make sense. Alexander wouldn't give up so easily. Unless... Vaughn's face suddenly paled. "Samuel, Rebecca." Without another word, they were running toward the millinery shop, Dawson close behind. The street seemed endless, each step taking too long as fear clutched at Olivia's heart. They rounded the corner to find the shop's front window shattered, the door hanging open. Inside, chairs were overturned, hat boxes scattered across the floor. "Samuel!" Vaughn shouted, racing through the shop toward the back stairs. "Rebecca! Hank!" A muffled sound led them to the storage closet, where they found Hank bound and gagged, a nasty gash on his forehead. Dawson quickly untied him while Vaughn continued searching the apartment upstairs. "Alexander!" Hank gasped as soon as the gag was removed. "Him and his men. They said they just wanted to talk, but they had guns. I tried to stop them." "Where's Samuel?" Olivia demanded. "And Rebecca took the boy," Hank said, his voice breaking. "Rebecca tried to stop them too. They knocked her out. She's upstairs." Vaughn reappeared, his face ashen. "She's coming around. No sign of Samuel." Dawson swore under his breath. "I'll organize a search party. They can't have gotten far." "They mentioned a cabin," Hank recalled, struggling to his feet. "East of town, near the old mining camp. Said that's where they'd wait." "I know the place," Vaughn said grimly, already heading for the door. "It's about 5 miles out. Used to be a line shack for the stage route before they changed the road." "Wait," Dawson ordered. "You can't go charging in alone. Let me get some men together." "There's no time," Vaughn cut him off. "My son is with a madman who's already threatened him. I'm going now." "Not alone," Olivia said firmly, joining him at the door. "I'm coming too." Vaughn looked like he might argue, then nodded tersely. "Alexander wants you. Maybe we can use that. I'll follow as soon as I can round up a posse, Dawson promised. Try not to get yourselves killed before we get there. They took horses from the livery, riding hard through the gathering darkness toward the east hills. Olivia's mind raced with fear for Samuel and self-recrimination for bringing this danger to his doorstep. "It's my fault," she said as they rode side by side, the horses' hooves pounding a desperate rhythm. "I should never have stayed at the ranch, never put you and Samuel at risk." "No," Vaughn said firmly. "Alexander is the one at fault, no one else." The old line shack appeared as they crested a ridge, a small, dilapidated cabin with light flickering through its single window. They dismounted a short distance away, approaching cautiously on foot. "Let me go in first," Olivia whispered as they crouched behind a fallen log. "Alexander wants me. He might let Samuel go if I surrender myself." Vaughn's hand closed around her arm. "We go together," he insisted. "I'm not letting you face him alone." A small voice called from inside the cabin, Samuel, sounding frightened but unharmed. "Pa, are you out there?" "The man says he knows you're coming." Alexander's voice followed, smooth and controlled. "Indeed I do, Samuel. Your father is very predictable when it comes to protecting those he loves." Vaughn's jaw tightened. "I'm going to kill him," he muttered. "No," Olivia said, gripping his arm. "That's not who you are, and Samuel needs you alive and free, not hanging for murder." With visible effort, Vaughn reined in his rage. "What then?" Olivia considered their options. "We need a distraction, something to separate Alexander from Samuel long enough for you to get to your son." "And how do we do that?" She met his gaze steadily. "I offer myself in exchange. While Alexander is focused on me, you get Samuel out." "Too dangerous," Vaughn protested. "He could hurt you both before I can do anything." "You have a better idea?" she asked. After a moment, he shook his head reluctantly. "But I don't like it." "Neither do I," she admitted. "But Samuel's safety comes first." They crept closer to the cabin, staying in the shadows. Through the window, they could see Samuel sitting on a chair, Alexander standing behind him with a hand on the boy's shoulder. The two other men were positioned by the door and the back wall. "Alexander," Olivia called clearly, still hidden in the darkness. "Let the boy go. It's me you want." There was a moment of silence, then Alexander's voice, tight with anticipation. "Olivia, how predictable. Come in where I can see you alone and we'll discuss terms." "No tricks," she responded. "Release Samuel first." "I think not," Alexander called back. "You come in, then we'll talk about the boy's freedom." Vaughn's hand found hers in the darkness. "Be careful," he whispered. "I'll be right behind you, looking for an opening." Olivia nodded, squeezing his hand before standing and moving slowly toward the cabin door, her hands raised to show she was unarmed. "I'm coming in," she called. "Don't hurt him." She pushed the door open, stepping into the dimly lit interior. Samuel's eyes widened at the sight of her, hope and fear mingling in his expression. "Miss Olivia," he whispered, straining against Alexander's restraining hand. "It's all right, Samuel," she assured him, trying to keep her voice steady. "Everything's going to be fine." Alexander smiled coldly. "Touching, but ultimately futile. Where is Mr. Sutton? Surely he didn't let you come alone." "He's gathering the sheriff's posse," she lied. "They'll be here soon. But I couldn't wait, not with Samuel in danger." Alexander studied her face, seeming to weigh her words. "Perhaps. Or perhaps he's lurking outside right now, planning some heroic rescue." He motioned to one of his men. "Check the perimeter. If you find Sutton, shoot him." The man nodded and moved toward the door. As he opened it, a figure lunged from the darkness, Vaughn, driving his shoulder into the man's midsection and sending them both crashing to the floor. In the confusion, Olivia grabbed a nearby lantern and hurled it at the second man, who was reaching for his gun. The lantern shattered, spilling oil and flame across the wooden floor. The man jumped back with a cry, his clothing catching fire. Alexander, momentarily distracted by the chaos, loosened his grip on Samuel. The boy broke free, running toward Olivia, who pushed him toward the door. "Go!" she shouted. "Run outside." Samuel hesitated, looking back at his father, who was still struggling with the first man on the floor. "Now, Samuel," Vaughn shouted, managing to land a solid punch that temporarily incapacitated his opponent. The boy fled through the open door just as Alexander recovered, lunging for Olivia with a snarl of rage. His hands closed around her throat, driving her backward against the wall. "You've ruined everything," he hissed, his face contorted. "Again and again, you escape the justice you deserve." Olivia clawed at his hands, struggling for breath as black spots danced before her eyes. Through the roaring in her ears, she heard Vaughn shouting her name, saw him fighting to reach her as the second man, having extinguished his burning clothes, moved to intercept him. The fire from the broken lantern was spreading rapidly, licking up the dry wooden walls of the old cabin. Smoke began to fill the small space, making it harder to see, harder to breathe. With desperate strength, Olivia brought her knee up sharply, catching Alexander in the stomach. His grip loosened just enough for her to break free, gasping for air that was growing increasingly smoke-filled. Across the room, Vaughn had finally overcome the second man, throwing him bodily against the wall. He turned to find Olivia, his expression frantic. "Get out!" he shouted, moving toward her. "The whole place is going up." Alexander, recovering from Olivia's blow, reached inside his coat and pulled out a small revolver. "Nobody leaves," he snarled, aiming at Vaughn. "Not until she pays for what she's done." "Charles wouldn't want this," Olivia said, her voice raw from Alexander's assault. "He loved you. He wouldn't want you to become a murderer." "Don't speak his name," Alexander shouted, his composure finally cracking. "You don't deserve to speak his name." The roof creaked ominously as the fire spread, timbers groaning under the heat. Outside, they could hear shouting the sheriff's posse had arrived at last. "It's over, Alexander," Vaughn said, edging closer to Olivia. "Let it go." For a moment, it seemed Alexander might actually lower the gun. Then his expression hardened again, his aim steadying. "No, it ends here." As his finger tightened on the trigger, a section of the burning roof collapsed, sending a cascade of flaming debris between him and his targets. Vaughn seized the opportunity, grabbing Olivia and pulling her toward the door. They burst out into the cool night air, coughing and stumbling. Sheriff Dawson and his men were there, along with Samuel, who threw himself at his father with a cry of relief. "Pa, Miss Olivia, you're all right." Vaughn gathered his son close with one arm, his other still around Olivia, as if unwilling to let either of them go. "We're fine, partner, just fine." Behind them, the cabin was fully engulfed, flames shooting high into the night sky. One of Alexander's men had made it out and was being restrained by Dawson's deputies. "Blackwood?" the sheriff asked, approaching them. Vaughn shook his head grimly. "Still inside, last we saw." As if in response to his words, a figure staggered from the burning doorway. Alexander, his clothes smoldering, his face blackened with soot. He took 2 steps forward, then fell to his knees, the revolver still clutched in his hand. Sheriff Dawson moved cautiously toward him, his own gun drawn. "Drop the weapon, Blackwood. It's over." Alexander looked up, his gaze finding Olivia through the smoke and darkness. For a moment, something like recognition flickered in his eyes, not of her, but of something deeper, some truth he had been avoiding. "Charles always said you had more strength than anyone knew," he whispered, barely audible over the roar of the flames. Then he raised the revolver, not toward Olivia or Vaughn, but to his own temple. "No, Dawson lunged forward, but it was too late. The gunshot echoed across the hills, causing the horses to whinny and stamp nervously. Samuel buried his face against his father's chest, and Vaughn turned Olivia away from the scene, sheltering them both. In the silent aftermath, as Dawson's men dealt with the remaining captive and the still burning cabin, Vaughn led Olivia and Samuel a short distance away, to a fallen log where they could sit and recover. "Is the bad man gone?" Samuel asked in a small voice. Vaughn nodded, stroking his son's hair. "Yes, he can't hurt anyone anymore." Samuel looked up at Olivia, his young face solemn in the firelight. "Were you scared?" "Yes," she admitted, seeing no point in lying to the child. "Very scared, but I was more afraid for you." "I was brave," he told her. "I didn't cry, even when he said mean things about you." "You were incredibly brave," she agreed, blinking back tears as she smoothed his tousled curls. "The bravest boy I know." Over Samuel's head, her eyes met Vaughn's. In that shared gaze was understanding, relief, and something more, a promise of what might now be possible, without Alexander's shadow hanging over them. Sheriff Dawson approached, his expression somber. "We'll need statements from all of you, but it can wait till morning. You've been through enough tonight. One of my deputies can take you back to town." Vaughn shook his head. "We're going home, to the ranch." The sheriff nodded, understanding. "I'll send someone out tomorrow for those statements then." As they prepared to leave, Vaughn lifted a sleepy Samuel onto his horse, then helped Olivia mount hers. The ride back to town was silent, each of them processing the night's events in their own way. At the livery stable, they found Rosa waiting anxiously with the wagon. "Hank told me what happened," she explained, reaching for Samuel as Vaughn lifted him down. "Rebecca is resting at Doc Peterson's. She'll be fine, just a nasty bump on the head." "Thank you for bringing the wagon," Vaughn said. "Samuel's too tired to ride all the way to the ranch tonight." Rosa nodded, her dark eyes moving from Vaughn to Olivia. "And you, Miss Parker, will you be coming home too?" Home. There was that word again, spoken so naturally as if her place at the Double S had never been in question. "Yes," Olivia said softly, "if that's all right." Vaughn's expression, as he helped her into the wagon beside Samuel, was answer enough. The ride to the ranch was peaceful, Samuel dozing between them, his small body finally relaxing after the ordeal. Above, stars filled the clear night sky and a quarter moon cast silver light across the rolling landscape. "What happens now?" Olivia asked quietly once they were well away from town. Vaughn's hand found hers in the darkness. "Whatever we want to happen," he said simply. "Alexander's gone. The truth about Charles' death is established. You're free, Olivia, truly free." The realization was almost too much to comprehend. After months of running, of looking over her shoulder, of never allowing herself to put down roots or form attachments, it was over. "I hardly know what to do with freedom," she admitted. "Where to go, how to start over." Vaughn's hand tightened around hers. "You could stay," he said, his voice low and intent. "Not as a guest, not temporarily, but permanently." Her heart quickened at the implications of his words. "Vaughn, I know it's soon," he continued. "I know we've known each other only a few weeks, but I also know that I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you, not even Eliza, God rest her soul." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "When I thought I might lose you tonight in that cabin, I realized that I don't want to spend another day wondering if you'll stay or go. I want certainty. I want you with us, with Samuel and me, making a life together." Tears filled Olivia's eyes, spilling over to trace warm paths down her cheeks. "I want that too," she whispered, "so much that it frightens me." "Why does it frighten you?" he asked gently. "Because I've never wanted anything this much before," she confessed. Not since I was a girl dreaming of a home and family of my own. And every time I've dared to want something, to hope for something, it's been taken away." "Not this time," Vaughn promised. "This time you hold on with both hands. We both do." Samuel stirred between them, his eyes fluttering open. "Are we home yet?" he mumbled sleepily. "Almost, partner," Vaughn assured him. "Just over that next rise." The boy yawned, leaning his head against Olivia's arm. "Good, I want to sleep in my own bed." He looked up at her. "Will you tell me a story when we get home, like you used to?" "Of course," she said, stroking his hair. "Any story you want." "The one about the brave knight," Samuel decided, his eyes already drifting closed again. "And the princess who saves him back." Vaughn chuckled softly. "Seems appropriate." As they crested the rise, the ranch house came into view, lamplight glowing in the windows where Hank must have returned ahead of them to prepare for their arrival. It looked exactly as it had when Olivia first saw it, yet somehow different too, no longer just a beautiful home, but a promise, a future, a destination after long wandering. "It's good to be home," Vaughn said softly, his eyes on her face rather than the house. "Yes," Olivia agreed, her heart full. "It is." In the days that followed, life at the Double S settled into a new rhythm. Olivia and Vaughn gave their statements to Sheriff Dawson's deputy, officially closing the case on the events at the cabin. Word came from St. Louis that Martha Wilson had indeed passed away, but not before writing a detailed account of Alexander's threats and Olivia's innocence, which her husband had kept safe. Rebecca recovered quickly and insisted on hosting a small dinner to celebrate Olivia's permanent residence at the ranch, a dinner that turned into an impromptu engagement party when Vaughn, unable to wait any longer, proposed marriage in front of their assembled friends. "Too soon?" he asked with a smile as applause erupted around them. "Not soon enough," Olivia replied, happier than she had ever imagined possible. They were married a month later, in a simple ceremony on the porch of the ranch house, with Samuel proudly serving as best man, a ring bearer, and Pa's chief supporter, as he solemnly informed everyone. As summer turned to fall and fall to winter, Olivia found herself settling deeper into life at the Double S. She planted a garden, expanded the chicken coop, and began teaching Samuel his letters and numbers, discovering a talent for education she hadn't known she possessed. When the first winter storm arrived, bringing thunder that rattled the windows and lightning that illuminated the valley in brilliant flashes, Samuel sought them out in the parlor, his small face tense with remembered fear. "Can I stay with you till the thunder's gone?" he asked, climbing into Olivia's lap without waiting for an answer. "Of course you can," she assured him, wrapping her arms around him. "Always." Vaughn, watching them from his chair by the fire, smiled at the easy affection between his wife and son. "You know, Sam," he said thoughtfully, "thunder isn't something to fear. It's just the sky's way of reminding us how lucky we are to be warm and safe together." Samuel considered this, his expression serious. "Is that why Mama went away during the storm? To make sure we'd remember to be thankful?" The innocent question might once have caused pain, but now Vaughn nodded thoughtfully. "I think maybe that's part of it, yes." "And now we have Mama Olivia," Samuel said with the simple acceptance of childhood. "So we're thankful again." Olivia's eyes met Vaughn's over the boy's head, sharing a moment of profound understanding. They had both lost much, suffered much, before finding each other. But in that loss was the seed of what they now shared, a deeper appreciation for the home they were building together. Later that night, after Samuel had fallen asleep between them on the sofa, lulled by the gradually receding thunder and Olivia's soft singing, Vaughn carried him up to bed. When he returned, he found Olivia standing by the window, watching the storm move away across the valley. "A penny for your thoughts," he said, coming to stand behind her, his arms encircling her waist. She leaned back against him, savoring the solid warmth of his presence. "I was thinking about the night we met," she said. "How I was so determined to leave before the storm." "And my boy convinced you to stay," Vaughn recalled, his chin resting on her shoulder. "It was the best decision I never intended to make," she said, turning in his arms to face him. "Staying till the thunder was gone." "And now?" he asked, his blue eyes reflecting the firelight. "Now that the thunder, all of it, is gone," Olivia smiled, rising on tiptoe to brush her lips against his. "Now I stay forever," she whispered. "Through all the storms to come, that's what family does." "Family," Vaughn repeated, the word rich with meaning. "I like the sound of that." "So do I," she agreed, settling deeper into his embrace. "So do I." Outside, the last rumble of thunder faded into the distance, leaving behind a washed, clean world, ready for whatever tomorrow might bring. Inside, wrapped in each other's arms, Olivia and Vaughn stood at the window of the home they had made together, watching the clouds part to reveal stars bright against the midnight sky, a perfect ending to the storm, and a perfect beginning to the rest of their lives.